What's going on, everybody? Hope everyone is having a great night so far. Back
Yes.
at it again with my co-host Brad. We got the legendary John Michaels. He'll be joining us shortly. Brad, the moment we've all been waiting for as Canes fans, the news. Manny
Yes.
Diaz will be the defensive coordinator, and Blake Baker still holds the title as defensive coordinator.
hmm
What are your thoughts on that, man?
Yeah. First off, man, the intro was awesome. We gotta keep that up, man. I think the fans really like it as well. But yeah, man. As far as the Blake Baker, Manny Diaz defensive coordinator announcement, as we all know, that this whole week, man, I kind of hinted at fans that this whole entire week there was going to be news almost every single day, and it's happened so far. Whether it's transfer portal guys coming in, whether it's players on the team announcing that they're going to run it back, and now with the coaching changes, it seemed like 2 weeks ago we were possibly going to see Blake Baker, Packy, Banda, Rump, all those guys gone. That there were definitely some smoke to it. I mean, I talked to a couple players on the team. I talked to players' parents, and they were all like that. So they all knew that something was brewing. Unfortunately, nothing came about it. But at the end of the day, we're gonna have to support the coaching staff that we got right now lined up. And I know a lot of fans are probably upset about the Manny Diaz defensive coordinator role, and obviously, like Baker is still going to have that role as well. But you got to look a little deeper into it, in my opinion. The fact that Manny Diaz will actually be the defensive coordinator, I know even though he was the head coach this past season, who knows how much defensive plays he was actually implementing with Blake Baker. But one thing I do know is when Manny Diaz is the defensive coordinator the whole entire year, when he flat out says that he's the defensive coordinator, our defense plays better. That there's no other way to put it. You go back to 2017, 2018, when Manny Diaz was the defensive coordinator, our defense was phenomenal. And you pair that with a Jess Simpson defensive line coach who we also brought in and is going to be taking the same role he had previously on staff. And, man, we did everything we were supposed to, man. What I like about Jess Simpson is he holds his players accountable, which is a huge word that we throw around the program pretty much every year. We need to hold people more accountable. He gets the most out of his players. Doesn't matter who it is, and he's tough, man. He's a very well disciplined coach. Which, don't get me wrong, man, I love Coach Stroud, but that's one thing I've heard from players and other people behind the scenes, that we just need a little bit more discipline in some areas. One, obviously, being defensive line, linebackers, and corners. And I think we answered at least 2 out of 3. And that is improvement at the end of the day. But as far as the Blake Baker, Manny Diaz thing, I think Blake Baker is pretty much just along for the ride right now. And I think Manny Diaz is this is his sink or swim moment, man. This is the season where it's all going to be on Manny Diaz. Everything that happened was all on Manny Diaz. He went out and landed a great development cornerback coach in Javaris Robinson. And I really do think he did reach out to a few defensive coordinators, guys like Charlie Strong, guys like Kevin Steele, maybe Charlie Patridge. We obviously know he reached out to Chris Wilson as well, who could possibly be the defensive coordinator at either Colorado or another school. But, I mean, he did reach out. It's whether he might have swung and missed, or he just wanted to go with plan B and kind of just bet on himself. And at the end of the day, we gotta ride or die for this Miami Hurricanes football team.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, regardless of the changes, I'm always going to support the University of Miami football program moving forward. Hey, in my opinion, it's going to be very interesting how this team, if they improve, how do they look under Manny Diaz calling plays defensively? Brad, a lot of people are stating, what's going to change? Blake Baker's still involved with the game plan. There were even conspiracy theories or whatever you want to call it. Manny Diaz was calling plays in this quarter, in the fourth quarter against NC State, in the second half against Virginia Tech, whatever you want to call it. There was always people stating that matter. I just want to see the changes. And I'm curious if we go away from the 4-2-5 defense, if we go back to Manny Diaz's traditional defense at Miami where players don't think as much and they just play football.
Yes.
And like you stated earlier, I mean, look, when Manny Diaz took over from Mark D'Onofrio, I mean, he ran a very good defense. It was definitely top 20 in the nation, at least. Did a very good job. I'm just very curious, how we play. In 2018, I thought we had a pretty good defense with Jess Simpson as our defensive line coach and Manny Diaz as our defensive coordinator. Do you think we can replicate that in 2021?
I do. I mean, like you just stated, there were certain times throughout the season this past year where we kind of saw firsthand that when Manny Diaz took over the defensive play calling, you saw a difference. And going back to that 2017 season where he was the defensive coordinator and you had Coach Simpson at D-line, you saw a huge difference. Don't get me wrong, Coach Stroud's a great defensive line coach, but Coach Simpson, in my opinion, was probably the best defensive line coach we've had in the past 10 years, all around. The guy knows what he's doing. He's done it at the next level. And we talk about our defensive ends being so great, but the position of need in that trenches that's been hurting us for so long the past few years has been the defensive tackles. And that is the one position that Coach Simpson always got the best out of our guys. And I think we're slowly creating some very good depth in the defensive tackle position. We have a lot of guys. I mean, you got John Ford and Nesta Severo coming back. You got Harrison Hunt. You got Leonard Taylor. I mean, you got Alan Hay. You got Blissett. You got Holly. I mean, you got Quentin Williams. You got Elijah Roberts. I mean, we got guys, man. It's going to be. We are, and I think that the key is Manny is going to be calling the defense now. There is no guessing or questioning throughout the season like we have in the past couple of years, but now we know Manny's going to be calling the defense. And what I know is that when Manny did call the defense, it was a lot better than what we saw. And again, it's improvement. And again, going to Travaris Robinson too. I would like to bring him up. Not only is he's probably the biggest hire we had this offseason. He's like the Rhett Lashley to me this year. But with Travaris Robinson, he made it very clear coming to Miami that the way he teaches his corners to not play soft, to kind of play man to man, that is something that this Baker defense did not do. So that told me, hiring a guy like Travaris Robinson, that we were going to change that scheme or the way we played on defense. So I think that is a very good point that you made earlier about if we're going to change the scheme up on defense, we might just go back to that hard Manny Diaz defense. And I think Travaris Robinson is going to produce some very good guys. We got some talent in the cornerback position. We just don't have the right coaching, in my opinion, at times. And you hire a guy like him, and then you got DeMarcus Van Dyke to kind of help him out. I thought that was very key because even though DeMarcus Van Dyke is listed as the cornerback coach, I talked about this earlier on Twitter, and I think he's almost going to act like a graduate assistant, right? He's kind of going to be Travaris Robinson's right-hand man. Even though he has a cornerback room, I think that whole corners, safeties, that's going to be T-Rob, And I think this is going to be the perfect year for DVD to kind of learn behind a legit veteran coach like Travaris Robinson. And Travaris Robinson is one of those elite guys that it's going to be hard to keep him around for 2 to 3 years. So who knows if maybe we're kind of getting DVD into this role to where in 2 to 3 years, if T-Rob decides to leave, we have our next guy in DVD to take over that cornerback room. The head scratcher to me in all this, if there was one, is Mike Rump going to the recruiting role. It makes no sense in my opinion. The biggest downfall with Mike Rump was recruiting. So you put him in a recruiting role where I think you could have easily had Telly Lockett get promoted in that position in my opinion. But yeah, man, I don't know.
Yeah, no, DeMarcus Van Dyke, as stated by Andrew Ivins, a lot of recruits committing to Miami. Definitely a lot of credit is given to DeMarcus Van Dyke, except 247 Sports can't, give credit to someone who is not a primary position coach. So DeMarcus Van Dyke, a lot of those recruits we landed, he had a lot to do with that recruiting process. So keeping DeMarcus Van Dyke, Manny Diaz acknowledged that, how important it was to keep him on staff instead of going to Utah State. So that was definitely a key person on staff to maintain moving forward. Trevont, T-Rob, cornerback coach, he's going to do a complete 180, I think. I think we're really going to get a lot better, specifically in pass coverage. Like you said, man, we're going to our corners are going to be a lot more aggressive moving forward. I'm curious of the development of DJ Ivy, Isaiah Dunson, Marcus Clark. Brad, I know there's one name we have not mentioned yet, Tyreek Stevenson, who, everybody was expecting him to come to Miami. There still hasn't been an official announcement. How do you feel with Tyreek Stevenson right now with Miami? I still feel confident moving forward. I think we have nothing to worry about.
Nothing at all. He is definitely going to be a Miami Hurricane, 100%. He will probably commit either tonight or tomorrow, from everything I've been hearing. But yeah, he's 100% a Miami Hurricane, no doubt about it. So he's just another valuable piece in that cornerback room that's going to give us a little bit more depth.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, Tyreek Stevenson, SEC corner coming in with all the experience he has. Yes. Look, we're providing nice depth, like we just stated, with our defensive tackles in the cornerback room as well. Look at our starting lineup. We can put Corey Couch on the inside and have Al Blades on the outside with Tyreek Stevenson, following DJ Ivy, Marcus Clark, and Isaiah Dunson. That's a nice set of guys moving forward in that cornerback room.
Yes.
That's a nice group right there.
I'm excited for Tyreek Stevenson, and I'm definitely excited for Al Blades and Ivy finally getting a guy that could kind of teach them some stuff. It's going to be interesting. The one thing I am curious about is DeMarcus Van Dyke and the cornerback role that he's going to be playing in, because I talked to Ko earlier today, and he brought up a very good point. Demoting Mike Rump and promoting DeMarcus Van Dyke, obviously visual-wise, it looks like one thing. But when you really sit down and think about it, what can DeMarcus Van Dyke teach these kids at a cornerback position that Mike Rump didn't? And I think that's a very important question, because I don't know if there is much that DeMarcus Van Dyke can teach these kids that Mike Rump hasn't already. I just think they need to have a different philosophy of how they go about things and kind of hold these guys a little bit more accountable. And I think T-Rob is going to be the perfect guy to kind of show them the blueprint in that regard.
Any updates on the NCAA adding more scholarships overall to Division I schools in football? I've been hearing about this since the beginning of the season, I want to say. I don't think the NCAA has made any remarks regarding that matter. Brad, do you think it will actually go through? Because I think it's just too late.
Yeah, man, I think it is too late. If they do, it's going to be like maybe five open spots. But from everything I heard, I think they're eyeing for the following year for it to take place, which is going to be tough for a lot of these other schools. Where we're kind of in a pickle now where if we do add a Tyreek Stevenson, we have no more guys in this class. We're pretty much full, which would mean if we want to add another guy or two, for instance, a linebacker like Pai Galiote, I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
If he's coming to Miami, that is one guy that I would probably add in the class and kind of count him forward for the following year, just because we need another linebacker. But other than him, maybe another corner if we want. But yeah, we will see a few more guys leave, in my opinion, but that's not going to count towards this class. It's going to count towards the following class.
Gotcha. A lot of people are stating, what's the point of keeping Blake Baker on staff if he's not going to call plays? What is even the point of having someone just dwindling, around the field if he's just going to be really a position role coach? But Barry Jackson, Miami Herald, did state he's going to be involved in the game plan as well. I'm kind of perplexed, kind of confused as to what's going on. I ultimately think Manny Diaz is just saving his buddy from getting fired. Brad, do you feel the same way?
100%. 100%. I think you hit it on the head. There's no reason for it, man. I think he just kind of kept him around. It looks like he's going to strictly be coaching like the linebacker position. But I feel the same way about Blake Baker that how I felt about Mike Rump the past couple of years. So there's no point of paying him to do something when you have someone else that's doing their job. So I think at the end of the day, man, Manny Diaz is stacking all his chips on him and his boys, and this is going to be the season where it's going to fall all on Manny. And if he doesn't do well, I think he could definitely be out of here.
Manny Diaz, it's been a roller coaster ride. Every offseason, then there's either firings, bringing new players, rehiring staff members. Then there's always a tough game to start the season. Yeah. Now we got Alabama game 1. We're up next. We saw them playing the national title game. Mac Jones is leaving. They're getting a new OC, but they always rebuild. I think Bryce Young is the new quarterback they have, underclassman, came from Southern California, 5-star recruit. I've seen his high school tape. I love everything about him. I think he's going to be a great player. Man, this is really going to be an interesting season. I know you and me were talking about this before we got on the show, but can Manny Diaz, can he survive an 8-4, 9-3 season? I think 9-3 he's good, even 8-4, but he's going to really have to show up with this non-conference game because the first 3 games, I believe, is Alabama, App State, and Michigan State.
Yep. Yeah,
those are some pretty solid football programs after Alabama.
Yeah, man. I think Manny Diaz, man, he's got to do something this year, man. If he doesn't, he's in a lot of trouble. And I think we're gonna know really, really soon in this football season. Like you said, week 2, week 3, we're gonna know what this football team's about. And I really do like the fact that we're playing Bama week 1. I know some fans don't, but I'm tired of these baby tune-up games where we start off slow. I want to get punched in the mouth early, and I want to see how well these kids adapt and bounce back, because I think a lot of this before we put on the coaches, and I think we're starting to have the right coaches in play at most positions. And I think now we're starting to have the right players as far as the culture that we're building, a lot of culture guys now. So I think there's no really excuses except go out there and play, man. And we can't go out there week 1 against Bama and act scared. We know who we're playing week 1. They're on the schedule. They've known for a couple years now. Just got to strap up the helmets and go play football.
And speaking of the elite, backstage, we have one of the most elite Canes content contributors out there. Not only for Miami Hurricanes football, but for sports in general. The pride and joy of Atlanta, John Michaels. Welcome to the Scoop on the U, man. How you doing?
What's up, guys? How you doing?
What's up, John?
Good to see you, man. It's been a while.
I know, brother. We talk about once a week at least, man, and try and keep in touch, man. But it's finally good seeing your face, and I know the Cane fans are super hyped to hear your voice and talk some Canes football, man. There's not too many people that bring it like you.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. It's been a while. I know there was a lot of people that have asked what's been going on with the podcast, why I haven't podcast. I'll tell you, and I think I said this on Hockman and Crowder. I actually caught COVID back right. As a matter of fact, the day after the Virginia Tech game, and I got pretty damn sick, unfortunately. One of those scenarios where I got pneumonia on it, and my wife caught. Spent a week and a half at home by myself. I had to send the kids and the wife down to do it. And I've had some personal issues, just nothing to do with anything other than just, I've had some time away. I haven't even really been writing for State of the U like I'm supposed to. Cam, if you see this, my bad, bro. I got stuff coming. It's just working and trying to take care of family and everything else. But Canes family, I know if you follow me on Twitter, @John, I was pissed off during the North Carolina game. I was more pissed off during the Oklahoma State game. And with what transpired over the last 4 or 5 days, all I can do is shake my head.
Yeah. Well, first off, I mean, we want to be glad that you're good and your family's good. Everybody's back healthy. You look a lot slimmer, man. You look a lot more healthier, man. You slimmed down a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if you could go dunk on a 10-foot goal right now, man.
No. I've never been able to dunk. Now, I'll shoot a 3 from about 30 feet. I have no problem with that. But over the year, from March until today, I'm down 51 pounds. I went from 60 back in March. I was a fat you-know-what. And down to 209, anywhere between 209 and about 212, depending on what I eat for the day. So it is good. I lost a bunch of weight. I feel really good with that. But COVID's no joke. I tell anybody, I had it. I ended up with pneumonia. They literally said my oxygen level was one number away from them forcing me to go to the ER. So I was lucky. They gave me some steroid shots. Mostly I'm healthy. My wife got it very minimal. She got fever and a sore throat. But if they tell you wear a mask, wear your damn mask. I'm ready to go back to games. We got the opening game in my city now. I want all my Canes family in Atlanta so we can go to Magic City and get the lemon pepper wings. So I can take you to the Oasis or Pink Pony, or we can go to Havana Club or whatever. I saw our buddy Marsh. Marsh was like, who takes a guy's trip to Atlanta? You should, because the women-to-man ratio here is 12-1. Unfortunately, for the women, there's a lot of gay guys that live in Atlanta. Nothing wrong with that, to each his own. But for single straight men, this is the spot to come to. And I'm telling you, Labor Day weekend against Alabama, it will be insane. Here's what they have at Atlanta. They have the Dragon Con Festival. And I don't know if you know what that is. That's basically where everybody dresses up as their favorite comic book or Star Wars or whatever type of character you have there. So you have a lot of women wearing a whole bunch of nothing walking around. They also have Gay Pride weekend that weekend, which kind of separates all the guys that want to do that. And then the opening of college football. So it's a weekend like none other in Atlanta. And I've got space in the basement if people need a place to stay. I can't have too many of you here, but I got to have a few. Brad, you're good. You got a spot to crash if you need to.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
Hey, John. Obviously, everyone is pretty aware of the news today. Manny Diaz taking over play call duties. Blake Baker still holds the title as defensive coordinator. DeMarcus Van Dyke, he's going to be cornerbacks coach. Jess Simpson is back at the University of Miami. I want to talk about Jess Simpson first because I know you've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for a while. You're very familiar with Jess Simpson. I mean, he's considered a legend in the state of Georgia in high school football. What are your thoughts about Jess Simpson coming back to the D-line?
Jess did a great job a couple of years ago when he was here in Miami. I think that was the year with Gerald Willis, if I'm not mistaken, where Willis had a complete game record at defensive tackle, and the defense played pretty well. Jess is a guy that, honestly, I'm surprised hasn't taken a bigger role somewhere. You say legend, absolute legend at Buford High School. I mean, this dude is unbelievable. He's one of the winningest coaches. Buford is a powerhouse here. Grayson, obviously, really good. Just won a state championship with Jake Garcia, our boy at quarterback. But Buford's right there the same way. So Jess is a guy that I like coming back. I'm familiar with the program. Some of the kids that were there in 2018, I think Nesta was there, John Ford was there, and some of the others, they'll be familiar with him, and he'll be a great tactician as far as, hooking everything up there. So that was one I'm really excited about, having Jess Simpson come back. Obviously, here in Atlanta, there was let's call it like it is, there was a lack of talent. You had Grady Jarrett and a bunch of sorry-ass defensive linemen. Alan Bailey, former Cane, when he's one of your best D linemen 10 years into the NFL, that lets you know it didn't matter who was coaching. Things weren't going to go well here for the Falcons.
Yeah, I mean, talking about things not going well, one thing that we know for sure, John, things that don't go well for the Hurricanes football team is when Blake Baker calls the defense, right? And another news that broke today is that Blake Baker will still be on staff. He will still be in some type of role when it comes to the defense, but now we know that Manny Diaz is calling the defense. Give us your thoughts on Blake Baker staying on the football staff, and your thoughts on, do you think the defense will actually change from Blake Baker to Manny Diaz calling plays, and if so, explain.
He shouldn't be here. His ass should have been. You don't give up 800 yards of offense in one game and do your job. Like, that's Al Golden crap right there. Al had his infatuation with his buddy Mark D'Onofrio years ago and just wouldn't get rid of him, and he ended up really killing the program at that point. Blake Baker's not as bad as D'Onofrio, but what happened against North Carolina and then against Oklahoma State was criminal. Oklahoma State was a team that didn't have their best running back. Chuba Hubbard was out, and we're sitting 10 yards off the ball, just letting a kid that had 4 catches catch pass after pass after pass. And I know, Brad, you and I had text back and forth. We had heard, potentially that Blake was going to be let go. We saw some reports come out over the weekend that he was told to go find another job. What I truly think happened is one of two things. Either the Board of Trustees did not approve the money that was going to be needed to go get a good defensive coordinator, or Manny couldn't get the guy that he wanted. We had heard Charlie Strong. We had heard Will Muschamp. Those guys are going to be $2 million a year, and they may not want to come work for Manny Diaz, and that's no disrespect to Manny. It's just these guys have been head coaches somewhere else. I do like Manny taking over the plays. I think that's big. If you looked, and I saw a chart earlier, maybe earlier this week, where people said pretty simply, Miami went from a almost 30, I'd almost say 70 to 75% man-to-man team when Manny was calling plays, to almost the opposite this year, where they were about 65 to 70% zone. Yeah. And how many times did we see our guys in coverage just lost? Whether it was the striker, whether it's the corner, whether it's the safeties, they just did not play well in zone coverage. And I thought Blake, for the entire time he's been the DC, he's been a guy that has not been able to figure out, hey, this is when we blitz or this is when we stand back. Manny, we know if nothing else, third down and long, he is sending the house. Yep. 3rd and 6, he's sending the house. 3rd and 2, he's sending the house. And that's what you have to see. So I like the fact that Manny's going to take over. But if you're doing that and you're keeping a guy with basically a co-DC title, and he's going to coach inside linebackers, why is he on the staff? Like, you could, hell, I could come coach inside linebackers, and give me half the money that Blake Baker has, and I promise my attitude is crazy enough where those kids are going to go play for me.
100% agree with you.
And that's something me and Brad were talking about, before you came on, is like, why even keep Blake Baker on this staff if you're just going to keep him as defensive coordinator? Why not go out? If he's going to coach linebackers per se during practices, why not go out and get a guy like Michael Barrow, for example? Maybe a Kevin Patrick. I don't know what his contract and his clauses are, but, why not invest time with people with a better resume? Telly Lockett, he was a linebacker, I think, in Idaho State or Idaho, wherever he played college football. There's other people who are much better recruiters than Blake Baker, can relate more to high school kids, So ultimately, I think Manny Diaz was just vouching for his friend, someone that he took at a young age that grew through the college football ranks under the Manny Diaz coaching tree. And I think that's exactly what happened.
And here's the thing. That's one of the hardest things in the coaching profession is when you bring your buddies on board. I mean, when you bring your buddies on board, it is hard to turn around and fire one of them. Like I've worked in management when I wasn't in radio. It's easy to fire somebody you don't give a damn about. It's hard to get rid of somebody that's your boy. And Blake Baker has been under Manny Diaz for a while. I said this offseason was going to be a really key test of what Manny Diaz was. And when he got rid of Mike Rump, ultimately just moved him into an office role, but he got him off the field where he's not coaching corners. I thought he was on. I think T-Rob's a tremendous hire. He's got a track record of being an awesome recruiter. He's been a defensive coordinator in the SEC. He can coach the hell out of defensive backs. And he's obviously a guy that's a Miami guy that wants to be down there. So, again, I thought you were on to something. Todd Stroud moving into administrative role, awesome. You bring Jeff Simpson, that's great. Pat Key sort of gets demoted. That's another guy. How the hell does he have a job? People were like, oh, the special teams were better. No. Jose Borregales and Luke Headley were awesome. How many times did we drop a punt? How many times did we have an explosive play on kick return? The answer is none. We gave up a long touchdown return against NC State. These are things that you just cannot have happen. Like, and that's where I see dead weight on the staff. Blake Baker's dead weight.
Oh.
Dead weight.
You bring up a lot of good points too, John, because going back to what you stated about Manny Diaz kind of playing a lot more man than zone, and now what we saw with Baker with the zone, I was on the same page with you. Once I saw someone like T-Rob get hired with the staff, especially at a DB coach for Miami, we all know that T-Rob loves playing man. He likes getting jammed up on the line and teaching these kids to get physical. So as soon as T-Rob came to Miami, that's where I was like, all right, I know for a fact we are not going to be running the same scheme that Blake Baker was running, just because there's no way that would work. So it kind of made sense that we were down to two options. Either Manny Diaz was going to be the defensive coordinator, or we're going to go out and get a new guy. But you bring up some other things as far as some key guys that we're going to need, especially in special teams, guys muffing punts, dropping punts. One name I want to bring up to you is a new addition to the Miami Hurricanes, and that's Charleston Rambo out of Oklahoma. I think a lot of people try to compare him to a taller Mike Harley, but I think another thing that Charleston Rambo brings to the table is his return ability. I think he's one of those guys that when he has the ball in his hands, he runs like a gazelle. He can go from 0 to 60 very quick. He does have a couple problems with drops, whether it be not turning his hands correctly or using his body when he catches. What's your thoughts on addition like Charleston Rambo?
I mean, this is a guy that had over 1,000 yards at Oklahoma. Obviously was there catching a ton of passes in an offense that's wide open, pretty similar to what Rhett Lashley has. I'm fine with bringing in talent. What I saw in that bowl game, you saw me at the Clemson game. I was pretty chill. I was mad, but I was chill. The North Carolina game, I was so angry I couldn't even be angry. I just sat there in disbelief that this is what we were dealing with. The Oklahoma State game, when I watched Mark Pope drop a post route on the first play of the second half that he's going to catch a 56-yard touchdown, and play at the end of the game where Nkosi drops a dime that's going to set us up at minimum to tie the football game. You have D. Wiggins missing a wide receiver screen that he literally could have moonwalked into the end zone and caught. You have to let these guys go. 16 and 14% of the passes thrown each one of those guys' way was dropped. I'm sorry. Get your ass off social media. Stop posting gas station pictures. Stop arguing with fans. Get out there with a damn jugs machine. I tell you, I covered Tony Gonzalez when he was here in Atlanta. Tony Gonzalez was a first ballot Hall of Famer about 4 years into the NFL. And you know who would be the last guy on the practice field 2 hours after practice was over every day? In the back of the end zone with the jugs machine or an equipment guy throwing the ball high where Tony could go get it. It was Tony Gonzalez. You know who sits out after practice for the Falcons every day? He's the best damn receiver in the NFL. He's Julio Jones. If those guys can work 2 hours after practice every day, I need to see a Mark Pope. I need to see a D. Wiggins get their ass out there and do the same. And if they're not getting better, then people need to pass them by. Rambo walks in and he's your number one. Mike Harley's going to be your number two. And I love the fact that Harley came back. Harley took to heart after the Clemson game. And Brad, we were there sitting 10 feet from each other. Those kids were dejected. They had heads down. They got their teeth kicked in by a superior team. And Mike Harley and the receivers challenged that week better. Mike Harley looked around and goes, damn, this is my last opportunity to play college football. Now they changed the rule, obviously. But he said, I'm going to take this thing to heart. He went out there and worked his ass off, and he became our number one receiver. Now you stick a Rambo next to him. You keep it where Harley and Pope and Gervin Hall and all and Xavier Restrepo, they don't have to go back and return kicks and punts. I think Miami got themselves somebody that's really going to help them. You guys can clear it up. Is he a 2 year still to play guy, or is this his only year in Miami?
2 years. He can play 2 years.
Nice.
2 years.
Yep.
Yeah, no, Charleston Rambo. I mean, to me also, like, the way I kind of compare players is like the transition from their conference to the ACC Coastal. Because, like, listen, if you disagree with me, fine. I think the ACC Coastal is the weakest division in Power 5 football. I really do. I think it's very weak.
South is a little bit worse because outside of USC, I don't think there's a team that can win 10 or 7 games out there. But you're not far off of it. The ACC Coastal stinks.
And one great thing with Charleston Rambo is he has been around some very good wide receivers that he's had to learn from. So he knows what it looks like to be an elite receiver and how, like John was saying, how to train off the field and put in that extra work. He knows what it's like to be around a great offensive-minded head coach in Lincoln Riley. So now him transitioning to Miami with a Coach Likens, a Coach Lashley, and now you have another veteran in Mike Harley. Now you have two guys that this young wide receiver group could kind of look after and figure out what it looks like to be a big-time wide receiver and a guy like Charleston Rambo that could be. My question is with the wide receiver room, we just found out today that Tate Martell will be coming back as well. So now you're up to, 12, 13 wide receivers on the roster? That's too many. There's got to be at least 2 or 3 guys, in my opinion, that are going to probably transfer.
This year, I don't think it is, because I got a feeling the NCAA is going to expand the roster anyway, which we're all hoping for, so we can get the transfer from USC and Tyreek Stevenson. Hopefully he'll be in here in the next couple of days. But if you got 12 or 13 on there, you got to think about it. Harley's a senior, Pope's a senior, Wiggins is a senior, Peyton's a guy that never really has developed the way that we want to. And you've got all these young kids that are going to come in. You're probably going to redshirt 3 or 4 of them if things go well, maybe 2 or 3 of them, somewhere along the lines. Tate Martell's a guy that becomes interesting, Brad, for me. I got to find different ways to use him. He's too good of an athlete just to sit over on the sideline. I don't mind looking at his sister either, by the way. If you're not following, is it Riley Martell? Holy cow. In my single young days, she would have told me no 25 different times. I kept damn asking. Good Lord.
Yeah.
What in that young woman. But Tate Martell's a kid that find different ways to use him. Find ways to jet sweep him. Find ways, how many times did we run those double passes this year? Let him. I know he doesn't throw it much better than our running backs do, but get him on the field somehow. If it's 8 to 10 plays that Tate's out there, I'm okay with that. People were all up in arms 2 years ago. He's taking snaps from our receivers. Our receivers sucked 2 years ago. Other than KJ Osborne, what the hell was the difference? I got to watch all these same guys drop balls over and over again. So I'm good with Tate. I don't think anybody transfers this year per se, but I could see some of them. I won't call them out by names. The one that loves to argue on social media with fans about the work they're putting in. I can imagine if those guys fall down on the depth chart, they decide to walk away and call it a year.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the offense, John, I know, we're in a group chat with other members and, we talk about the offense per se. What improvements, what changes do you want to see from this offense moving forward? It was year one under Rhett Lashley. They did put up 34 points per game, but at times, it was very repetitive. I felt like we ran through the middle of the field too many times. Our run game was not fluent at all at times. It was completely absent. Will Mallory, I felt like could have been targeted a lot or just utilize our tight ends a lot more. They're considered two of the best tight ends in the nation, the tandem they have. But, ultimately, I feel like we could have used Will Mallory a lot more and Don Chaney as well. Get more snaps. What improvements would you like to see?
We still have to get better push on the offensive line. When we were that you think of Louisville and Florida State and some of the games early in the year where they were able to get some movement, the offense is unstoppable. If you all of a sudden get that first down where 6 or 7 or even 5 and you're ahead of the chains, I love it. I hated some of the play calling, specifically be 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, and inside zone was coming. It's going to be tough this year, and I think the big challenge is going to be De'Aaron King's health. Because now if he's and not going to say he's going to be afraid to run, but if he's not quite as effective running, all of a sudden that inside zone or that RPO or just the zone read, if he can't pull it and take off and pick up the runs that he has, teams are really going to load the box. I think Devon Donaldson coming back next year 100% fully healthy is huge for the interior of the offensive line. Those kids struggled a lot of times to push. I don't know what happened to DJ Scaife. Scaife was a kid 2 years ago when he started at right tackle. I said, holy cow, we've got ourselves a star offensive lineman. And this year he just didn't seem to have it. Ja'Kai Clark played well. Some games played poorly. The other, Corey Gaynor never really has gotten better. The bowl game, how many times did he snap the ball at Nikosi's ankle? Those three, that position, and it might be Isaiah Walker, it might be a Jalen Rivers, maybe some of those guys. We have to get more push on the inside. And I'm with you. I'd like to see some more diversity in the run game. Where were the off-tackle plays? Where were the counter plays? We ran them very few far between. When we did run them, it was really, really.
One thing I will say about that, though, is one thing I've noticed when we had De'Aaron King at quarterback, it was very noticeable when we were going to run the ball, especially RPO, which I think didn't help our running backs or our offensive line. As soon as De'Aaron King went down and N'Kosi Perry came in, Rhett Lashley did a very good job at kind of changing the offense to implement and help N'Kosi Perry. And what you saw a lot more deep passes down the field, which kind of kept the defense on their toes and guessing, where it kind of opened up that running game a little bit easier for our guys. So I think that is something very interesting that I want to see moving forward, especially against Alabama. You brought up a very good point about De'Aaron King. He's going to be a guy that, for him to be De'Aaron King, he needs to run. Right. And if he's not 100%, if he's second-guessing himself, going against Alabama week 1, your first time coming back, is not the best team you want to go up against to think like that. No. So it's going to be interesting to see if Tyler Van Dyke or Jay Garcia is our starting quarterback.
Yeah, it's going to be De'Aaron King. If you start Van Dyke or Jay Garcia against Alabama, it's going to be 51-3. I hate it. This isn't Miami 1988 or Miami 2001 where we're going to line up and play a team like Alabama and go toe-to-toe. You're going to need King to be out there. And, ACL's so now. This is 1990 or something like that. He would have been out 16 months. You can get back from an ACL really in about 6 months, and 8 months be 100%. The good thing is he's a guy that's gone through this rehab, not necessarily ACL, but he had a knee injury before where we think he can come back. But you have to find a run game. I think another thing to kind of go back to what Rhett Lashley can do better, it didn't seem like we moved the pocket very much for De'Aaron. It was a lot of play action where we out of the shotgun and you put it in the belly of the running back and then throw it. We didn't have a lot of half rolls. We didn't do a lot of different stuff where we got him on the move, where it was basically he could get outside the pocket and potentially tuck it up and run and get outside. We did that once or twice, and one of them was the big touchdown against Florida State where he half rolls to D. Wiggins, and D. Wiggins runs a post from the opposite side, and he's absolutely wide open. So I think those are certain things that Rhett, maybe in year number 2, can do a little better. I also think there were times Rhett absolutely was trying to cover up the some of the failures on the offensive line. And I think when you don't have guys that can get pushed, you're just trying to get the ball out quick. You're trying to use your tempo for your advantage. And we saw against better teams that played good defense, that tempo just didn't work. That tempo, it would work, but also it would work to your detriment. Think about North Carolina. We go 4th and 1, and Chaney gets stonewalled. The game's over. Because I think it was 14-3 then. You get that 4th down, they go in and score, and it's 14-10. It's a whole different game. It was 21-3 like 2 plays after that, and then I really got into the Tito's and Red Bull, which I'm happy
with. Overall, guys, we know what this team is moving forward. We have our staff changes. Manny Diaz is calling plays. We're bringing in our transfer portal players, Charleston Rambo, DeAndre Johnson, who I think is going to have a stellar year next season, especially coming from the SEC. Also, I think everyone feels pretty confident Tyreek Stevenson will come on board eventually. What's the outlook going into the 2021, whatever, however you say it, 2021 season? First 4 games are tough. Alabama, App State is not a bad team whatsoever. Then you have Michigan State under a very good coach in Mel Tucker. What's a good outlook that you have for next year? Because for me, I think it's just get through the non-conference, go 3-1, and then work from there. And if you beat North Carolina, you might have something this season, because that's going to be a solid football team with one of the best quarterbacks in the nation.
Now, Carolina does lose a lot. Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, the NFL. I think they lost a wide receiver or 2. And they lose. It's crazy to think. What was the kid that played quarterback that was now their linebacker? Why can't I?
Surratt.
Yeah,
Surratt.
Best defensive player they had, and he's going to the NFL as well. But the problem is you go to Chapel Hill, which is going to be a hornet's nest going up there.
Yeah.
The goal for me is always you have to be in the ACC title game. Would have been there this year if there's no Notre Dame. Even with the loss to North Carolina, you would have been in the ACC title game. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. There's no excuse for Manny Diaz in year number 3 to not be playing the ACC title game. I think we all agree we're going to get our ass kicked by Alabama. It just is. I hope I'm wrong. I hope with Bryce Young at quarterback and Najee Harris and Alex Leatherwood, and Jalen Waddle and Mac Jones and all the guys they have going to the NFL that maybe at the right time. Let's be real. Nick Saban's going to have 5-star after 5-star ready to play. These are kids that have been chomping at the bit to actually get time. We're going to get our ass kicked. You have to then beat App State and Michigan State, and then you have some directional school that you'll kick the crap out of. So you're right. If you can be 3-1 at the time that you get to conference play, you're better than everybody in the ACC Coastal other than North Carolina. Florida State is still a train wreck, and it's a transition year, and we'll get to go to that trailer park and beat the hell out of them. I forgot the other team that we play from the Atlantic. I don't have the schedule. I know it's not Clemson.
NC State.
Okay, you should beat NC State. You get them at home. Yeah, they can score some points better than NC State. You played them this year with 15 guys on the COVID list, and we're still able to go up there and get a win. This is a 10-win football team. It should have been a 10-win football team this year. You wet the bed against North Carolina, and you lost to an inferior Oklahoma State team. You're better than everybody else. And to me, that's the baseline. It's ACC championship game or bust. And if you can't make the ACC championship game this year, I think we're looking for another head coach in about 12 months.
I couldn't agree with you more, John. And it's all on Manny Diaz. Manny Diaz did what he wanted to do this offseason. And again, I mean, I think he did pretty well in this offseason again. And if you look at it, the 2 things that stick out to me, especially with all of these pretty tough away games that we're going to have, is coaching is going to have to become really key, especially in away games. And when you look at the coaching staff this year now to when we just lost to Oklahoma State, we're a lot better in position groups that were very lacking this past season. And the other one is having key guys that know what they're doing. And another thing that Miami's lacked for years is veteran guys coming back for another year that didn't have any opportunity to go in the NFL. And that's another thing that we hit on the head this year, man. It started with De'Aaron King coming back, and he kind of just created a domino effect. And almost every single person has came back besides Brevin Jordan and Jose Borregales. But I think it's going to be very key with a coach like Jess Simpson, who could get the most out of defensive linemen, specifically defensive tackles. You bring back Nessa Severa and John Ford with a Harrison Hunt and a Leonard Taylor and an Alan Hay and the Blissettes and the Hollies. We are starting to create valuable depth at key positions. And with the cornerback position as well, I think we have certain guys that can do well, maybe not be the Alabama or the LSU corners, but again, we're in the ACC Coastal. There's no reason why our corners shouldn't be as good as the Virginia Tech corners that are 3 stars, you know, right. and it all breaks down to coaching and developing. And I think now with Coach Robinson and a DeMarcus Van Dyke, who's going to learn from him, I think we should see a huge improvement.
We should, you know, and Brad, you hit right on the head there. Kids coming back. You know, 5 years ago, Nesta's going to the draft, and he's a 6th or 7th round picker, an undrafted free agent. A couple of years ago, Mike Harley leaves, and he doesn't come back. You literally would have had all of these kids gone, and then wondering, damn, Miami started freshmen and sophomores once again, and we're not very good. And all of a sudden, you have senior, where a guy like James doesn't have to walk. Now, James Williams, Leonard Taylor's ass better on the field. But in years past, those kids would have been absolutely happy to be on the field. They would have had to be, you know, starters day one when they're really not ready for it. You think about, you know, Alabama's able to put the special 5 stars on the field, and the rest of the guys will sit. They'll have a 5-star, like I think Alex Leatherwood started as a true freshman.
Evan Neal. Yeah,
Evan Neal started as a true. Najee Harris was a 5-star running back. And you know who he was behind? Bo Scarborough, Josh Jacobs, guys like that. And he had to sit. We got Duke Johnson, and Duke Johnson, granted, he's one of the great running backs we've had. He had to start day one or play a lot day one because we didn't have that depth. This past year was great. Cam Harris starts, and all of a sudden Chaney can sit and play some. Rooster can play some. Now you get kids coming in, and that's where we can go back to the receiver room. You got all these kids coming in. There's no guarantee they're going to start. And it's nice to see where a kid can get to go to college, learn what it's like to be on a college campus, because it's so different than high school. You're your first time away from your parents. You've got freedom. There's beautiful women walking around everywhere that are going, hey, you're a 5-star. I want to sleep with you. That may not have happened at Miami Northwestern or Booker T. Washington or St. Thomas. Now all of a sudden you're at the University of Miami and you're getting all that love. But if you got a chance to sit and not have to start day one, I think it's fantastic. And if a James Williams comes in and wins a job, even better for us. I think with coaching depth, a recruiting class, 2 recruiting classes in a row that have been really good, we're slowly building the way this program's supposed to be again.
Now, speaking of players returning, how do you guys feel about Amari Carter and Zach McLeod if they choose to return next season? Now, I did read somewhere where players do have to let NFL organizations know in advance if they are declaring for the draft. It seems like Zach McLeod's returning is what I heard. Would you care for him at defensive end?
I mean, as a rotation piece, fine. He better not ever play linebacker for us again. Nothing back. You know, he gave 5 years in blood, sweat, and tears. He was better as a true freshman than he was last year as a 5th-year senior. I remember his first couple of games with him, Shaq, and Pink. I go, holy cow, we've got the Bermuda Triangle again. We've got Barrow, Smith, and Armstead. And I remember Joe Zagacki tell me, John, I love your enthusiasm. Stop. They're not even close to those guys. Like, those guys were otherworldly special. And Pink, Shaq, and McLeod were good, but they were never at that peak. If Zach wants to play DN and get rotation, fine. You know, if Amari Carr wants to bump down and play linebacker some, fine. I don't need him at safety.
Yep.
Hopefully Avante Williams ends up being healthy and he can play. We've got James Williams back there who can play. Cam Kitchen's coming in. He can play. You know, if McLeod and Carter are on the team with an expanded roster, I'm not mad, but don't let them play just because they're older guys. Yes. I want the most talented dudes on the field, and if they're not talented enough, kick rocks. You know, I love you guys. Thank you for everything you've done, but I don't need you on the field if you can't play.
Yeah, I totally agree. Both of those guys, I think if they do come back, they both need to switch positions. One needs to go to DN, one needs to go to linebacker, and you hit it on the head. They're rotational guys. There's no reason why you should be at Miami for 5-6 years and
How about both of them run their ass down on kick coverage?
special teams.
Amari Carter, you want to hit somebody and knock, go run down on special teams and knock somebody's ding ding in the dirt. I go back to old school Miami, and I hate to, I sound like an old guy now, but you'll go back in the 2000, 2001 team, or 99 and 2000, 2001. There was a guy by the name of Carl Walker. Carl Walker was like 4-star coming, never good enough to get on the field. But guess what he would do? He would run down on coverage and knock the living crap out of somebody. I need Amari Carter to do that. You want to set tone against Alabama? Let Carter come down there like a heat-seeking missile and tell him, you get a targeting penalty on this, I'm not even mad. Just go do like, was it Ryan McNeil or Robert Carter? I forgot who it was back in the Cotton Bowl in 1990. Who he literally said before the game, I'm going to run down there and I'm going to knock out the first guy I see. And he literally runs down and knocks out the first player that literally knocks the guy unconscious for Texas. You know what happened for Texas? They wet the bed after that. They peed down their leg and they didn't want to play Miami anymore. When is the last time we've ever done that to anybody, other than maybe Florida State this year, because they were a bunch of whiny crybabies?
I would have to go back to Notre Dame.
Yeah, Notre Dame peed it down their leg.
Yeah.
And I think part of that was the atmosphere. Those kids walked in and go, holy shit.
Yep.
What's going on here? Miami needs to get back to that. But we need guys that are willing to sacrifice. We used to have starters. Again, maybe not even starters. Go back to 2001. You know who was running down on kick coverage?
Sean Taylor.
Helen Winslow Jr., Najee Davenport. Guys like that were running down on kick coverage.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are players that made it to the NFL as first-round picks. Maybe not Najee, but, you had guys like that, Antrell Roll, running down on kick coverage because that's the way that they can get on the field. I'm tired. Nothing against our walk-ons. I don't need to see a 5'9", 100-pound white dude running down on kick coverage. I want to see Amari Carter run his ass down there and knock the living crap. Robert Bailey, that's the name I was looking for. Knock the crap out of somebody.
John, I want to ask you 2 over or unders. The first one, over and under 4. Is 4 losses going to keep Manny Diaz's job next year? Over or under?
Ooh.
If he loses 4 or more games, he's super fired. So he better go under. Again,
Okay.
9-3 is like, 9-3 ends up being something that's, I don't know, 9-3 is a baseline. Because 9-3, if you lose to Alabama and you figure you lose 2 more along the way, as long as they're not both in the ACC, you're okay. If you go 9-3 and you lose to Alabama and App State or out there, if you lose to App State, you guys can go to hell at that point. But so if you go 9-3 and somehow make it to the ACC title game, he's safe. 4 losses, he's out. I can't name 4. Alabama's 1, and maybe North Carolina's 2. There's nobody else that should beat you.
What if he wins the bowl game?
Who cares? What we saw this year is bowl games. If you're not in the playoffs or the New Year's Six, they just
doesn't mean nothing.
And that trend, unfortunately, going back 5-6 years is never going to change. There's too many kids that go, I've got too many millions of dollars to lose. Go play a game that doesn't matter. What bowl games have become is a glorified spring game. It's literally a glorified spring game.
No, John, I agree. 4 losses, I definitely don't think Manny Diaz is the guy, but we don't make that decision. Do you think the man above Manny can make that decision, or is there pressure on him right now?
Like, okay. As long as the program continues to be, let's be honest, when Miami comes on TV, people watch. I got more tweets about the damn Cheez-It Bowl than I did Georgia playing in the Chick-fil-A Bowl, and I cover Georgia on a daily basis. You know why? Because Miami matters. People want to see if you're not a Canes fan, they want to see us lose. If you are a Canes fan, people obviously go crazy and we matter. But Blake James has no pressure. I mean, let's be real. What has anybody ever said Blake James might lose his job? Seriously, you have a basketball team in shambles, and it's nothing against Coach Larinaga. You've had it seems like the last 4 years, every year they've been in. The end of the Jim Morris era, they just said, okay, we're going to let him be the baseball coach as long as he damn wants. And he ran the program into the ground. I had never in my lifetime not seen Miami make the NCAA tournament. And the last 2 years of Jim Morris, you don't make it. Now, Gino DeMario is doing a great job. He's got them back. You know, they were a national title contender before COVID this past year, and they're going to be really good this year. But the football program has been mediocre for 20 years.
Yeah.
But nobody said, hey, Blake James should get fired. You know why? Because they make money. Money is all that matters right now. They've got that cushy ACC contract. They get television rights. People still love the U. The merchandise flies off the shelves. Blake James, and I agree with Anthony here. 10-3 doesn't even matter though. You go 10-3, what is that? You go 10-3 and lose out to North Carolina and your bowl game. Then you sit there and go, what has Manny Diaz done? And that's where I argued about the merits of him having a job. What's his best win in 2 years?
NC State.
NC State on a Friday night with 15 guys on COVID. That's the best win in 2 years. That's not good.
Not at all. I will say this before we let you go, John. One interesting guy that I didn't really think about until recently when I heard Josh Darrow from Miami have an interview with him. Dan Morgan would be an interesting choice to not necessarily take over what Blake James is doing, but maybe just overlook football for Miami in general. He is one of those guys that has been around the University of Miami program. He's been in the NFL. He knows the background of what a program should look like on the higher level. I would be interested to see if Dan Morgan would ever want to come to Miami and kind of rebuild the football program.
And I forgot what he does in Buffalo. I know he's got some type of administration role or management role up there. Mm-hmm. He'd want to come back to school. That's kind of what Ed Reed was brought on for, was to overlook the football team. And everything I've heard from many different people around Ed Reed is he did not like what happened at the end of the year. And you have to remember, Ed went through growing pains when he was here. I sat in a driving rainstorm in 1999 when they lost to Penn State. And Ed Reed, people forget, got benched the week after the Penn State game because he was late on coverage against Chocolate Fields for the long touchdown. He went from, I think he showed up in 97 when Miami goes 5-6 and they're dealing with probation. Giving up 66 points to Syracuse at the Carrier Dome. He knew what it was like to build that. And I'm hoping his oversight is kind of rubbing off on Manny Diaz and that these kids are really understanding, like, okay, yep, we got our teeth kicked in by Clemson this year. We got blown out by North Carolina. But so that happened in the 98 season. And all of a sudden you come back and you beat number 3 UCLA. And the 99 season, you lose a close one to Penn State, a heartbreaker to East Carolina. You get blown out by Virginia Tech. Here you start to see got kids. They've got kids this year. It's been 20 years since we've won a national title, and I can argue that the team coming back in 2021 is the most talented team we've had probably since 2005, and that's saying a lot. You've got a quarterback that's a star. You've got a big backfield of running backs. You've got at least competition at wide receiver. An offensive line that's probably better than you've had in half a decade. The one position that scares me is linebacker. I still don't know who the hell our linebackers are going to be. I know Bradley Jennings probably doesn't need to be out there very much. Wayman Steed and Sam Brooks are try-hard kids that, unfortunately have not really blossomed the way that you want. I need Corey Flagg, Austin Cave. I need one of these guys to show up and really get things going. Other than that position, I think we've got talent, especially if Tyreek Stevenson comes here. You're solidified pretty well in the backfield.
Beautiful. Well, John, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to come on the show. We greatly appreciate it. We love your work.
Always.
We love everything you do with the University of Miami, covering the team and sports in general. So thank you once again, man. Greatly appreciate it.
Anytime.
Yes, sir.
Hit me up at John Michaels U on social media. If you get a chance, download the 680 The Fan app. That's where I'm on mornings, 6 to 9 a.m. I get in Miami talking to one of my co-hosts is a Florida State grad. She doesn't like it very much, but I make her throw up the U.
Yes, sir. And before I let you go, John, my other over and under was 20. Mm-hmm. Over or under 20 Tito's and Red Bulls, me and you in Atlanta.
Oh, over.
All right.
I've got my buddy Theo. Theo is the regional manager for Tito's here in Atlanta. I'll hit him up. I'll probably have a case of Tito's. We'll be good. So, yeah, we'll get things going.
Let's do it, John. See you soon, brother.
See ya.
Peace. Thank you to the 350 people watching us tonight. Yes. Greatly appreciate it. Another great show. Brad, anything else you want to add for everyone watching?
No, just thank you guys again for tuning in, checking us out. This is all for you guys at the end of the day. I know some people aren't happy with some of the news that came out today, but at the end of the day, we got to support the program. And well, I know first game against Alabama, I'm gonna be there with John rooting on the Hurricanes. I almost said the Cowboys. Jeez, my Dallas Cowboys have been pretty bad lately. I don't know how they came into my head, but yeah, man, it's gonna be a good time. Thank you guys again for tuning in, and I think we'll be getting some Tyreek Stevenson news in the next 48 hours. So go Canes.
Love it. Always all about the you guys. Take care.